Welcome to Sunday Scaries skill sessions. Today I'm going to be talking about overgeneralization. So overgeneralization is a cognitive distortion, and cognitive distortions are essentially just illogical thought patterns. So things like catastrophizing or black and white thinking, they also fall into that category. But with overgeneralization, that happens in essentially two ways. So the first is whenever we take something that's happening in the present moment and we use that as evidence for what's going to happen in the future. So if you were supposed to go on a date and you get stood up, overgeneralization would sound like, this always happens, or I'm always being rejected. I'm never going to find anyone. And the second way that this happens is when we take an error and use that to then define ourselves. So we assign ourselves a trait based on the error. If you made a mistake at work, rather than looking at that singular incident, that single mistake, you might start to say like, oh, I'm such a failure, or oh, I'm such a loser. So that's sort of what overgeneralization looks like. And what we know is that it is correlated with depression. So it's something that you definitely want to be on the lookout for. So if you catch yourself making these overgeneralizations, one of the easiest things that you can do to combat that is to force yourself to get specific. So let's take failure for an example. You're saying like, oh, I made this mistake, I'm such a failure. You want to ask yourself, all right, what does it mean to be a failure? What does someone have to do in order to be a failure? You might say it's someone who's messing up, someone who makes mistakes. All right, let's get even more specific. How many mistakes do you have to make in order to be considered a failure? 10, 20, 30? And the more you start to ask yourself those specific questions, the more it starts to become clear that these labels are sort of nonsensical, because human nature really does not fit in those kinds of boxes. So it starts to open you up to seeing things a little bit more clearly rather than overgeneralizing them. So hopefully that can be a helpful trick if you catch yourself doing that. Remember, it's when you take something that's happening in the moment and use that to predict your future or color your entire existence. And it's then when you take an error that's been made and then assign yourself a trait based on that error. So things to look out for are words like always, never, or these kinds of nonsensical labels like good, bad, successful, failure, things like that. Those are clues that you're probably overgeneralizing. And if you catch yourself doing that, try to get more specific to open yourself up to more of what's in the gray area.